Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Fridays with Keenan's Cutting Edge. My name is Jenna Labourr, and I will be your host as we explore the dynamic world of Don Keenan's trial philosophy, The Cutting Edge. Those of you joining us live this afternoon have the opportunity to ask questions and interact with our speakers. If you have a question, please type it into the comments section below and we'll be sure to address it. Episodes are released each week following the live broadcast, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and click the alerts icon so you don't miss an episode. And if you want to share it with somebody, you can do that on Monday as soon as the recording comes out. Today, we have Kari Jones Dulin, who you all already know, and she brought a friend with her, which I'm so excited about, Molly Greenblatt. We're going to spend some time talking about what it's like to be a female trial lawyer. Whoa, very exciting. The truth is, men and women are different, and male and female trial lawyers have different experiences. And what we talk about today is not every female trial lawyer's experience, and the things that we don't talk about today may be things that we have experienced and just didn't think to talk about. So I invite anybody who's watching live of the male or female persuasion to hop in and join the discussion. We'd love to chat with you about these different experiences. We want to talk about the positives as well as the negatives and just kind of it's almost the elephant in the room sometimes, but let's talk about the elephant. It's big, it's there, and we, might as well give some language to it. As always, we'll put Kari's and Molly's contact information in the description below. So if you have questions about them, or if you have, young women who want to become trial lawyers maybe, or young women who are in law school, those are folks who might want to reach out to some women who've done it and to talk about that. So Kari and Molly, welcome. Thank you so much for being, I'm kind of blurry. Am I blurry? That's weird. Or we're going to work on that, which means I'm just going to move around until my camera fixes it. Anyways, thank you for being here. I'm so excited. Will you please introduce yourselves again? I know, Kari, you've been here, you've been around. We'll start with you. And then Molly, I'd love to hear, a little bit about your background and what what brought you to us today. So Kari, take it away.
Thanks, Jenna. Good to be back. Good to see you. Again, Kari Jones Dulin, have my own firm, Dulin, McQuinn & Young. Been involved with Keenan basically since I started my career as a lawyer, which, how cool is that?
Very.
I'm a KTI instructor, damages, and for a while did the Women's Summit course. I am excited to discuss this topic. Molly is a very dear friend of mine. We are co-counseling a med-mal case. That's her specialty. So basically, I just sit back and watch her work her magic. But my practice is essentially everything but med-mal, really. And so I'm excited to have my friend Molly with us today. She recently just got out of trial, so we can pick her brain on what that lovely experience was like. But yeah, just excited to be here, and hello to everybody out there listening.
Awesome. Okay, Molly, who are you and how did you find yourself here with us today?
Well, good question, but I'm Molly Greenblatt. I've been a trial lawyer for almost 20 years now. I am a partner at Leventhal Puga Braley. Most of my career has been doing medical malpractice. I don't do much else, although a few cases come in and I'll do them for fun, but most of my time is spent doing plaintiff's work, medical malpractice. And most of my work there, probably about half of it, is representing kids in birth injury type of cases or other types of injuries to kids. And I met Kari many years ago working on an education piece for trial lawyers, and we became fast friends and have stayed friends. And she caught me in a moment of weakness and convinced me to come on here. And so here I am. This is not usually something that I do, so it's totally as a gift to her. I look forward to making sure that she pays for it later.
Nice. Sometimes you have to make those strategic moves, right? You're like, okay, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it because later I can be like, remember I did that thing for you?
Yeah,
100%.
It'll come up. It'll come up. Yeah,
it will. It will. All right. Well, welcome both of you. Thank you for being here. I just want to ask a super basic question. Like, how did you become lawyers, and what made you want to become lawyers in the first place? Just like digging way back.
Molly, you go first.
Sure. Good question. I fell into it, to be quite honest. I was an athlete most of my life, college athlete, thought I would play professional sport. That didn't turn out mostly because the pay for women at the lowest professional level was so low that I was never going to make a living. And I met with some athlete friends of mine, and basically the answer was go get a law degree. That's where you can try to normal the pay scale between men and women. So that's really the reason I went to law school. I really fell into trial work. I had no idea. No one in my family is a lawyer, let alone a trial lawyer. But quickly realized that reading contracts was real boring. And I actually enjoyed the adrenaline rush of being in the courtroom because I was an athlete. And so I started off at DU doing everything I could to get myself in a courtroom. And from there, it just sort of happened. And I ended up at Leventhal Puga Braley, honestly, on accident. And I've been here most of my career. 99% of my career, and have grown here, and now I'm partner here.
Okay. That's fascinating, the connection between being an athlete and competing in an arena or a pool or on a field and being in the courtroom, because I never really thought about how that might be similar.
I honestly tell most young lawyers, what are the skill sets that you use in a courtroom? And I tell them I learned most of them on a golf course. And really not in law school. So I use my golf skills, ironically, more now than I thought I would. And my golf game is absolutely terrible now. So, because I spend too much time doing trial work. So, but yes, it's very fascinating how I'm able to use those skills. And I tell young golfers and also young lawyers that to use those skills from other parts of your life.
Very cool. Awesome. Kari, about you?
Can I brag about Molly just for 1 second? So when she talks about her golf game being poor, haven't you been banned from winning at the RTLA conference? Like, hasn't literally RTLA said you can't win anymore because the boys are mad? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I'm not always invited anymore.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, like, she beats everybody.
Wow.
Yeah, so she's obviously a phenomenal golfer. So I pretty much always wanted to be a lawyer. Like, my mom kept my 8th grade paper on literally, like, I want to be a lawyer because I really wanted to be a prosecutor, because at the time obviously at that age, I didn't understand what being a personal injury lawyer meant. So I thought that being a prosecutor would be the way to get into the courtroom, because I thought that's the only way to really be a trial lawyer. And so, went to law school, got out, and then before I got licensed, I became a pre-litigation case manager for a personal injury firm here in Colorado. And that's really where I learned personal injury, got licensed, obviously, and then the rest is history. But I was an athlete. I wouldn't say I was a good athlete, but I was definitely in team sports. I grew up in, playing every sport. But I will tell you that this skill set that I feel like I use the most in my profession as a litigator, sometimes in the courtroom, sometimes litigating honestly, is working as a bartender. And I say that because I had to deal with so many outrageous personalities, and learning to remain calm in the midst of chaos. Back then it was bar fights, but maybe not that different than litigation now in the courtroom, I don't know. But honestly, just learning how to deal with people. So, who knew?
That is such a huge part of our practice, and not something that I was ever prepared. I never realized, because it's not just, I always figured, the lawyer on the other side, you're gonna have to deal with them, but your clients, medical doctors, you either who are, if you say you have a car crash client and it's the medical providers who are treating them, or let's say it's an expert, or oh my gosh, the judge, the mediator, like all of these people, there are so many. And we're all insane, like certifiable. And I don't know how we deal with each other, because it's crazy. So yeah. God, yeah, I got into a heated email exchange with opposing counsel this morning on something, and the response, I was like, this is too much, sir. This is too much. I'm like, why are you taking this from 0 to 60? But interesting. Well, just by way of background for me, just because I'm going to include myself a little bit in this conversation, happen to share the gender. I was very much into sexual and domestic violence advocacy before becoming a lawyer, and that was because of experiences in my background. And I was a musician actually, and was classically trained and did all things music, went to school on scholarship for music and everything. And same thing, realized I was not going to make it, or thought at the time. I mean, I don't know how at 22 you know anything about making money or how much money a person needs to make. But I thought, there's no way I'm going to make money doing this. So I'm going to do more business stuff. So my major ended up being business. And then I got towards my senior year and I was like, but like, what does that mean? Like, what do I do with that? Don't we just go and apply to a company? And my dad said, I always thought you should be a lawyer. And it's also similar to Molly. I no lawyers in my family, had never met one in my life. Maybe I had, but didn't know anything about it. And, but I was like, well, I don't know what to do with my business degree, so I might as well. And I kind of put my domestic violence and sexual assault stuff into my legal education and focused on that as much as I could throughout the 3 years. Washington State used to have a position that I believe was in the prosecuting attorney's office, and you were a lawyer for victims. And I wanted that job, but they got rid of it right before I came back to Washington after doing law school. So that sucked. But that's how I started my own firm right out of law school and just did what I could, and it fell into personal injury. So that's how I got here. But yeah, so that's how I got here. I don't know that I ever really wanted to become a lawyer. I don't even know if I still want to be a lawyer, but here we are because I find myself decently good at it and it pays the bills. Yeah. Is being a lawyer what you thought it would be? And we'll separate the gender part of it for now, just in general.
No.
All right, Molly, what did you think it would be and how's it different?
Well, I didn't realize the type of, I just assumed we'd be in court every day, right? You'd be in trial all the time and you wouldn't have all the stuff that happens before you go to trial, right? All the motions practice. But I think the biggest thing I've learned when I became a lawyer, especially on the plaintiff side and doing, let's just call it PI work, was how much time you were going to spend on case selection. Right. And deciphering, do we take this case? Do we not take this case? I never really appreciated that in law school. I don't think we do a really good job of teaching our lawyers the business side of the law at all. Right. And how much of that time actually takes, and we're not getting paid during that time. Right. So that's been a real lesson in how to learn and how to do that. And I had no idea. I just assumed, you get a file, you go to trial and you try it, right? Like you got the little file in law school and you got to do your 10-minute oral argument, which was so fun. And I just assumed it would be the same. And it's not.
Well, and everybody, hopefully most people who know who are listening, that the most important chapter in the old reptile book, which of course we've evolved beyond now, but that old one was case selection criteria. And it's still the same. We teach it the same in Edge. Don Keenan has kept that one-page document. He does it for all of his intakes, and then it's the first thing he looks at before doing closing argument as well. Why did you take this case? And oh my God, you're right, because I'm thinking back to some of the cases I took early on, especially because I was not involved in Edge, and I was a solo lawyer who didn't know what lawyering was. And the desire to help people can almost be a detriment, I think, at times, because you're like, what happened was wrong, and this person was harmed. I can help them. And that is not always the case. So, yeah. Definitely a big difference. Kari, what about you?
Well, Molly and I were just talking about case selection criteria this week, and how important that is. And especially the business side, nobody really prepares you in law school for, I think there's the business of being a lawyer, but then I think there's also the business of being a PI lawyer. Right, because we are the exclusive clan that has contingency cases, and so that means that we're willing to invest in the people in our state, and we have to be really excellent at case selection criteria, because the reality is, though we want to help everybody, we can't do that, because if we help everybody, then we can't really help the people that we know we can get a recovery for. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's not, the standard is not that, can we help you? The standard is, can we get a recovery for you? Because our job is to not lead you down the path where, God forbid, you end up owing costs because of a loss. Mm-hmm. And so I think as lawyers, you have to get to the point where you can say, I'm okay not helping this person, even though they really deserve it, because my job is to get them a recovery, and it's just not possible with every single case. And you have to go through some hard knocks to get there, unfortunately. And that's really tough. And you're right, it is super important, and it's hard for us. We get emotional, we get invested in cases, and we get blinders, which is obviously why focus groups are so important. But I think that is, Molly brings up really good points. Those, I think, are some of the most important things for the work that we do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Do you think they're kind of the more feminine side of some of us lends itself to being a little bit more like too much compassionate at times? Just to insert the gender thing, since that's the topic today, a little bit into this, because it kind of segues nicely.
Not me.
No?
Yeah. I could see Kari gonna say that anyway. I'm not considered the nice one in my law firm. I carry a reputation of negative Nancy. I also carry the reputation of princess. So be that as it may. But I think from my perspective, I think I learned the lesson pretty early. I got burned in trials. And when I looked back, although I don't own my firm or the firm that I work at, I really recognized how big of a toll it took on the firm and on the lawyers. And actually, most importantly, our staff, our team members. They really get behind cases. And when you get them excited behind a case where probably shouldn't have taken it, it's really hard. And so I've really learned to continue to listen to my voice of negative Nancy and embrace it. But I think some of that comes from, who's around you and who's helping make those decisions. I'm filled with a bunch of lawyers who are exactly what you're talking about, very compassionate, want to help everyone. And so I think just because of where I am, I've had to take almost an opposite role. Be like, wait a minute, hang on, should we be doing this? But I also really believe that sometimes we're helping somebody by telling them that they shouldn't move forward with a case.
100%.
And I believe that's helping them. And as long as you explain why, and sometimes the answer is, what the legislation or the laws in your state or where the state, where this claim would be brought are just not on your side. Mm-hmm. And then if you remember that, and if you get the opportunity to push some legislation or something along those lines, maybe, that Jane Doe can be used later down the road to help push legislation ideas or some other type of change. And I do think that that's helping them. So, I've really tried to embrace that giving good legal advice sometimes means you don't have a case or you don't have a case worth pursuing. And here's why. And I feel just as good about that as I do when I tell somebody I'm willing to file their lawsuit. But I understand that I'm in the minority on that, especially as a woman. But I think it's because of where I work. I've had to kind of grow that skin.
Absolutely. Those are really good points. And I feel like medical malpractice, I also do some employment law, but those are they call you right after it happened, whether somebody died or was severely injured or whatever, or if they got fired on the employment side, and they are hot to trot and they are coming at you like, I want to tear this place to the ground. And that's sometimes, at least in my experience, where I'm like spending a good 20 minutes on the phone saying like, hey, just kind of take it down a notch. Here's why you don't have a case, or maybe it's not ripe yet, with damages and whatnot, especially on the employment side. If you get a job tomorrow, like, what are we doing here? So I agree that, spending that time to take him down and say, all right, what are we really looking at here, and how best are we going to move you forward? Either maybe it involves a lawsuit, or maybe for your sake it doesn't, because litigation is brutal and it is not fun being involved in it. It's not like a party where you're like, woo, this is great. Let's go for justice. And then at the end of the day, everybody gets cake. Not always everybody gets cake. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Justice has a tainted view. Right. Like, I think everybody has a perception that doesn't do what we do. Like when you have potential clients that come in the door and, you know, it's clear that what they perceive is going to happen to them is going to be like it is on TV or in the movies. Mm-hmm. But I want to say something quickly about Molly and I. You know, she is a negative Nancy, which is one of the many things I love about her. And she and I work on a lot of things legislatively together too here in Colorado. So we work together on a lot of fronts. She'll tell you no, but I will tell you no, and then I'll hug you. Mm. So that might be the difference between us. She'll just tell you no, and then be like, I'm done, and then I'll probably hug you. But my ability to turn things down, really, my lens changed too as being a business owner, because suddenly now I'm like, oh, okay, what, you know, that's because if we can't stay afloat as a business, then we can't help people anyway. Yeah. And so that's changed my lens a lot on the case selection criteria. And then also from the med-mal standpoint here in Colorado, you know, we've got horrendous caps that we made a little bit of progress legislatively last year. It's not like, you know, the changes that we made can, you know, immediately help people overnight. And so, you know, when you're thinking about the investment that you make as a firm financially in a med-mal case, right, compared with caps, compared to most of Molly's trials, and I'll let her speak on this when I'm done, but most of them are not just a week, they're many, many, many weeks. And so you've got the financial investment, and then you've got just a personal investment. That is time away from your family, and the emotional toll that it takes when you are in a case where you know probably shouldn't be tried, but you're in it anyway. Those are real losses at the end of the day. And so all the more important, I would imagine, from a med-mal standpoint in terms of case selection criteria. Yeah.
And I do think that's where women, to get back to the subject you wanted to talk to us about, I think that's where women can excel, really, because I think that women have this really wonderful attribute that they can look at all things or look at something from all sides, right? And you know, I think I don't think males have that, and it's not a knock on them. Look, I love men, right? I mean, my father's my favorite person on the planet. My brother is too, my significant other. And I grew up playing golf. I grew up playing with mostly men. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I would always choose to go to a bar with men than a, you know, bridal shower with women most days of the week. So it's not a knock on them. It's just not their attribute. And so, you know, what I think one of the things that I've been able to really realize that I can offer a trial team, is that outlook. And, you know, I would say to any woman, use that. That's your superpower, and, you know, use it wisely and use your words around it. You know, I was telling Kari, you know, I should have been more voiceful on my last trial. And I will learn from it, and I will be a better lawyer because of it. But I had feelings that we probably shouldn't be moving forward on a case at multiple times. And I haven't yet quite discovered why I didn't say the words. So I'm still on that self-discovery path, a little postmortem. But I know for sure I'm not going to do it again. And so, you know, I'm trying to discover that, you know, when you're faced with a case, and, you know, negative things can happen in cases, right? They happen all the time. An expert tanks, or a client tanks, or, you know, just recently on a case in our office, an expert died or has a terrible medical situation that's going on that's going to result in them not being able to testify. Those things happen. Trial's real life, you know? So, you know, as those things happen, I do think that we need to pivot, stop, you know, take the time, talk to our clients, you know, here are the options. They've changed, right? The outlook has changed. And I think that as women, we can really do that, because I think we do that in everyday life, right? Like, men, I think, sort of have like this goal, and they're on it, and they're looking at it, and they see the goalpost, and that's where they're going. And I don't know that we do that as much to our benefit. I think we actually look side to side and think about alternatives. And for me, I'm going to challenge myself to listen a little bit more to that and voice my concerns a little bit. And I think that is a power that I have to bring to my trial team. And, I'm the only woman on my trial team. So that I should bring and will bring, and lesson learned. I mean, it's a practice of law. We have to keep growing and learning. But, I think that to bring it back to the women, I think we have that opportunity and we need to use it more often and see it as a superpower rather than a negative.
Do you feel like at times we suppress some of those natural instincts that we may have because of trying to possibly fit in or have a certain image as women?
Sure.
You guys do that? Yeah.
For sure. And I think also Kari brought up a good point, the self-sacrifice or the family sacrifice when we go to trial. I think that we downplay that, and I don't think we should. That's real, right? We all have whatever it is, whether it's kids, dogs, husbands, significant others, it doesn't matter, but they're all paying a price also. And, we need to be voiceful about that. Is it worth it? Should we be talking, is it worthwhile going to a 3-week trial? What's the risk reward? Is part of the risk, that Molly is going to be, away from home for 3 weeks. What does that mean to her? And then again, of course, very importantly is what cases is, Kari not working on, or is Molly not working on while they're in trial, right? That's also a piece that I think, I don't think men really think about, and I think women do, and we just don't say it enough. And so one of the things that I wrote down, I post-mortem every trial, whether we win or lose. And I think we said before we got on, sometimes we learn the most lessons from the losses. And I post-mortem in a journal. And one of them to me is to really be a little bit more noisy about those things and talk about those things, because I think it is important. And I do think we tend to suppress it. And let's not fool anyone. We're still working in a man's world. Let's not be fooled. I'm still called honey on the record. I'm still asked to go get a Coke. We've come far, but not far enough. So let's embrace what's there and manage what's there. And I'll also say and support each other while doing it.
Yeah, I think that, number one, I think that as women, when it comes to our lens in a case, whether we try it, whether we think about settling, I think that women are just naturally better about considering all of the options and taking ego out of it. I think that we're more natural at resolution. Why is that? Well, probably because we have a lot of barriers, right? We have a hell of a lot more barriers. We're used to being told no. We're used to being told that we can't do something. And like Molly said, we pivot. Isn't it the book, like, Who Ate My Cheese? My therapist told me I had to read that goddamn thing. But it's really what that book is about is like pivoting. What do you do when you run out of cheese? Then you figure out how to get more cheese. Like, I think we're very good at that because just being a woman, especially in this profession, we have to pivot all the time. Well, what does that mean? It can literally mean pivoting in a case, pivoting in the middle of trial, because that always happens, because things happen that you don't expect. But honestly, like, when you think about what we do in our daily lives, and literally Molly and I were just talking about this, like, the things that we have done, whether it's trial or a hearing or a depo, the things that we have going on personally where nobody in the room is going to know, whether it be, let's just say it, this endometriosis, debilitating cramps. I've had kidney stones. Nobody's going to freaking know because I'm going to do my job, because every single day as women, we've had to go through life regardless of what's going on. Not only that, but we've got families, we're running households. Oftentimes we have second and third jobs that don't get acknowledged. And I don't mean to bash my husband because he's my most favorite person really, but he and I were in trial. I was in trial 1 week. He had a trial right after me. I made lunches for him. Did he make lunches for me? No. Did I make sure that everything was taken care of in my household before the trial so that it would run smoothly? Absolutely. Would he know how to do that? No. Because we think ahead, and I know Molly is like this to a fault. She thinks, months ahead, and she's got everything planned out. We do that as women because we've had to. I mean, that's just right. So I think that's one thing that we bring to the table is talking about superpowers. I mean, I think that we're so good at multitasking and handling all these other things at once, all while looking like we've got everything calm and we know exactly what we're doing. We're managing all of that behind the scenes. I think that's what makes us really good, not only trial lawyers, but plaintiff lawyers, because being a plaintiff is incredibly difficult. So I think that's really another superpower that we have.
Yeah. Yeah, those are absolutely good points. It does feel oftentimes that we're not just doing the money job, but also, and I don't have human children, but I do manage the household, run the household, so I do have little baby puppy children, but it's true. It's like, who's going to, my husband's working in the other room. So I also don't want to be mean or talk down, but it's like, what are we going to have for dinner tonight? I may have had a super long day, may have had DEPS all day or whatever. And it's like, are we going to go out? Are we going to order in? Are we going to cook? Like those thoughts have to happen actually like at 9 a.m. in the morning. You can't just sort of, or like, did I clean the house or, what am I, there's a lot that kind of goes on behind the scenes. In what ways do you feel like you have embraced your feminine side in trial as a trial lawyer, and conversely, where you've been like, I need to be more masculine?
Molly, you go on this because you've had a lot of talks about this.
I think for me, the hardest thing, it's not one or the other. I think the hardest thing for me is to embrace who I am and to be me, right? To be authentically me. I think early on in my career, I tried to be other people in my firm, right? I'm going to try this because they look so great when they do it. And I just failed. I was terrible at it, and whether it was male or female. So I think more than like one or the other, it's just really trying every day to be authentically me and what that means. I can be very assertive. I grew up in a family where I was encouraged to be assertive and have an opinion. I mean, we used to have to, we'd have family voting day and my parents would get out the ballot and then we would say, this is what we're voting for. And then it wasn't just that, it was like, well, why? And we'd explain why, so I grew up in a family that embraced that and encouraged that. So that's very natural to me versus another woman, it may not be. Recently I went to trial with another woman. I've actually never been to trial with another woman. I've always been to trial with men. And it was the greatest learning experience for me because I realized this other side of women and it can work, right? I saw the benefits of it and really decided to try to embrace, maybe with certain people, meaning certain experts particularly, it's better to be a little softer and not be my assertive Molly Greenblatt, right? So I'm even trying to embrace that even a little bit more than I used to, because I just didn't realize it, frankly. And it was one of the greatest learning experiences I had for myself. Again, postmortem was, is there a way for myself to sit there and go, okay, which version of myself, still being authentically me, works best for this witness, because at the end of the day, I'm not making the choice in the cases, the jury is, right? So how do I best present that piece of evidence or that witness? And I think when you're more authentically you, no matter what that is, I think that the witnesses get it and they're more comfortable. And therefore, the jury sees it as more authentic. And I think that it comes across that way. Now, you're always going to have difficult witnesses and yada, 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 of course, all of that. But I think the more that one is just authentically themselves, the better lawyer they're going to be. And I think the mistake, at least I made as a young lawyer, was trying to be somebody else. And that was just a silly mistake. And I bet most young lawyers make that mistake, it's because we see somebody, we idolize them, we look up to them, we see them, they won a big case or they won a big verdict or they won a big motion, whatever it is. But I think it's really important to just be authentically you. I can just think of one example. I was arguing a motion in front of federal court many years ago. I was a young lawyer and it was on endometriosis and whether or not that should come in at trial or not. And I quickly realized that I was going to be in a room full of men and I was going to be the only woman. And me being me, I quickly changed out of my black suit and I put on a colored suit and colored heels. And I walked into the courtroom. And the reason I did that was like, this is a feminine issue. This is a woman issue. And first of all, how dare the men try to pretend like this is their issue, because it's not. And how dare they try to pretend they're going to understand it. And, the judge actually complimented me on my suit, then complimented me on my argument, and I then won. I have no idea if it was because of the suit or the shoes. I have no idea. But what I do know for sure is I felt better arguing that for a young woman because I chose to change my clothes and embrace me in that moment. And so I think it's more of like, don't be more male or more female. I think it's more of be you, whoever that is. You have people that, post on listserv, should I wear pants or should I wear a dress or should I wear a skirt? My advice, be you. Whatever, like I am more comfortable in a courtroom in high heels. Kari feels the same way. She and I have talked about this ad nauseum. There are other lawyers who are friends of ours that wouldn't be caught dead in high heels in a courtroom. And I don't think either choice is right or wrong. At all. I think that you should be you in the courtroom. And if that means 4-inch stiletto heels, that's what it means. Now, I don't think you should be wearing your gold sequined high heels. Let's be real,
That's another podcast.
Right. That would be a fun podcast. So, I think that we should get away from, should we be more male or more female? And I think we should get to where we should just be more of ourselves and continue to challenge each other to grow and be better, but not to be or emulate someone else, because that doesn't work. I mean, Kari's never going to be me, and I'm certainly never going to be Kari. As Kari says, she is way nicer than I am. And it's to her credit.
Coming in with the hug after she says the mean
thing. And I can count on one hand how many clients I've hugged. Yeah. So, it's very different. But I would also say any person, whether they hired me or Kari, they would have, great representation. They would be heard. They would be strongly advocated for. And, that's a testament, I think. One, I think Kari and I challenge each other all the time when we talk, and I ask her, "What'd you do in trial? What are you trying? What are you trying? Is it working? How did it go?" Or, we once had a case with the same defense lawyer, and I'm calling her every day. "What did you do? How did you handle her? She drives me crazy." And how to handle she driving you crazy, but not piss off the judge or, more importantly, the jury, right? So I think there are ways for us to be terrific women in this profession and not compare ourselves to men at all, frankly.
Ooh, I love that. I mean, I think that when you are your authentic self is when you will be the best at trial, because if you're trying to be somebody else, you're going to miss the good stuff. You're too busy playing a role. And I think that the example, Molly, that you just gave about arguing, I think it was a motion that had to do with endometriosis. I mean, I think that it's totally okay to change up who you authentically are depending on the witness, opening, closing. Why? Because I think about who I am at, different situations in my life. I mean, there's absolutely, most of the time, I always say 95% of the time, I am the nicest Iowa Midwest girl you'll ever meet. I'll probably even loan you my car, much to my own detriment. But the 5% of me will shank you if I feel it's necessary. And so there are times at trial when it's okay, because authentically I am like, that witness needs to be shanked, but other witnesses, you want to be that caring teacher in your role as a lawyer that day, because that's genuinely how you feel. And if you really feel that way, then you're free to think of the great next question, or, the joke, whatever it is that might be gold at trial, because it's true. I've done the same, trying to be somebody else. I'm never going to be Dawn Keenan. I should be so lucky, but that's not me. And so if you can feel good in your own skin, that's the best case scenario. So I totally agree with Molly. It's not about male or female. I think at the end of the day, it's just being who you are and being comfortable with that. Because isn't that when you have fun too? Yeah. That's when you can really have fun. And that's what I think creates longevity in our career, is you have to have fun, because there are a lot of really tough moments. Mm-hmm. Lots of them.
Yeah. How have jurors have jurors giving you feedback on things that seem a little, I mean, I'll just say right off the bat, as I'm listening to you guys, I mean, I love the idea of being authentic, but I'll tell you right now that I've jurors been like, didn't like when you wore that outfit, didn't like when you had your hair like that, didn't like your nail colors, I'm like, what does that have to do with the case? And I was, really trying to focus on asking the witness the right questions and not whether my hair was the way you wanted it to be. Now, let's be honest, if they don't like your case, maybe they're starting to look at other things. Okay, so maybe there is a deeper, and I'm not even saying this is necessarily a masculine feminine issue, but I had Peter Levine on a couple weeks ago, and he was so cute because he was like, I was having so much fun in this trial. I just realized I'd been wearing the same suit for 3 days, and I was like, I would freak out because, and we take juror feedback with a grain of salt, because when they're giving you feedback, they're not necessarily sure why they're giving it to you. But I have had so many jurors comment either positively or negatively on clothing choices that it just happens to be in my mind. And if I wore the same suit 3 times, I'm like, oh God, juror number 4 is going to like vote against us because they think I'm smelly. So what experiences have you had with that?
A lot. And I will say, I mean, my comment about being authentically you, like you got to have some boundaries, right? On the suit selection. I will say I've worked really hard with a jury consultant personally on, I would say, finding things that one is authentically me, but also isn't going to bring about as many comments, let's just say, so, but that's like, time I've spent that's, really trying to figure that piece out. I still probably dress differently than a lot of other women lawyers in court, but I've worked really hard at that. I've also worked really hard at, what my hair should look like. Not that I'm like, feel like I'm caving in, but for me, where I draw the line, it's like, okay, I want to do what's best for my client. So if what's best for my client is that I don't wear my big hoop earrings, I'm just giving an example, then do I really care about wearing the big hoop earrings? No, I don't, right? So, I have spent a lot of time trying to kind of migrate my authentic self into what presents well in front of a jury. I will also tell you, in my last trial, one of my suitcases went missing on my flight into Ohio, and I was the lawyer, I was the woman, by the way. The men were laughing hilariously at me from the parking lot, who had to go to Ulta Beauty to get all of my toiletries and all of my makeup because it was packed away, because I was never going to be able to go to trial on Monday morning without my stuff. I was just not going to be me, right? So I made them go into Ulta Beauty. They lasted approximately 30 seconds, by the way. They then quickly exited, and I'm like pulling things off the shelves like a mad woman. And then we went to Target. Not that I was going to buy a lot of stuff from Target, but I needed some things. And then I said, I need a couple other things. And they're looking at me like I'm crazy. And I then had to call home, and I have way too many trial shoes to ever admit to. And I had to have trial shoes shipped to me because I didn't know if my trial shoes were going to make it in time. And so, my significant other boxed up 5 pairs of trial shoes in a FedEx box and sent them to me. But at the end of the day, that's how I was going to feel comfortable to start that trial on Monday morning. And that's what I did. I promise you, they are still making fun of me to this day for having to do all of that. And I just take it. It's fine. I know that I needed that, and it turned out all just fine. But I think that, to answer your question, 100%, we've all been told, why are you wearing that? Or you wore this, or, that was distracting. And I think, I don't know that we're ever going to get away from that. And sadly, in society, they are judging us, it. But I think the more polished you look, the less that impacts, and again, polished is big, right? It's where you feel comfortable in the world of polish. So, yes, your shirt should be tucked in, of course, right? Things like that, I think that we should pay attention to. The other stuff, I think you're absolutely right. I think if they don't like your case, then they start nitpicking at you, right? Then they're like, okay, Molly, give me a break. You wore those, navy heels 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
That type of stuff.
And you're like, why are you looking? Obviously you hate my case, so you're not listening to the witness, you're looking at my shoes.
Right. But, be that as it may, don't wear the gold jewelry, right? Like save the gold jewelry for Friday night party.
Mhm.
So I think there's wiggle room in there, but I think, again, back to us being our authentic selves, spend the time to figure out what works for you in a courtroom. Because I also think if you're comfortable, they're not looking at your blue shoes because you're comfortable in your blue shoes, but I've spent a lot of time on that. More so, I mean, as I tell people, they're like a little bit shocked about how much time I've spent on that. But it's just, I've always wanted to feel very comfortable. I don't want that to be an issue. So if it's already handled, then it's never an issue. And I'm so strange. Carrie will laugh because she knows this. Like, I set out my trial suits. They're all set with the shirts that go under them, the shoes, but way before I start trial. And it's Monday through Friday, Monday through Friday, Monday through Friday. My trials are usually 2 to 3 weeks. And they're all set out and the shoes are in boxes. And I wheel my shoes to court every day because as a young trial lawyer, I foul outside of court. So I don't wear high heels into court, but they get changed once I'm into court. And, I'm sure people make fun of me and that's okay. Although I did have one woman one time leaving court who had just fallen and she's like, "You're brilliant. That's the smartest thing I've ever seen." I see
women coming in with their tennies all the time and then swapping them out and, in court. Carrie, have you used any sort of assistance like that? I mean, that's a great idea, using a trial consultant or somebody to kind of help.
I have not, but I have focus groups, specifically me, and what I wear, how I act, my mannerisms. I tend to do things like I pick my nails. And I try to do it under the table, and I work really hard because it makes me look insecure. And it's just a defense. It's how I get energy out, and I can't do that at trial. So little things like that. Molly and I have talked about controlling the courtroom. I know she does certain things that she does to make it known that this is her room. I do other things because it makes me feel good because I'm very controlling too. But I think to look at the flip side, it is hard because I think as women, we are judged from head to toe. And Molly and I call it being on point. Nanny, petty, hair, shoes, not a thing out of place. Like and that's just how we are because it's been required of us, right? But I also think the flip side of that is it can be super fun because it's kind of like playing a role. It's still being authentic, but there's authentic Friday night Carrie. There's authentic Sunday Carrie. There's authentic Tuesday in a depot Carrie. And you kind of get to play a role, which is really, really fun. Trial is on steroids. Like, who am I going to be today? I love that, but I've even taken it so far as like strategically wearing things for depots. Like that has really been, I've been in a ton of depots. My 2025 has been, kind of a fire starter when it comes to depots. The end of 2024 was. So like, how can I change up the monotony of this day where I'm seeing all of the same men in this particular case? And so I started to really kind of put some thought into what I'm wearing to see if I notice if it changes the dynamic. In particular, I have a male opposing counsel that has been pretty awful and triggering for me. And so I've started to, and it's just really funny, the results that I've gotten from my thoughtfulness about what I wear. It's so crazy. But like the good news is as women, we get to play around with that. Men don't get to do that. So it's kind of an advantage for us.
That's true. I had this, well, I'm tall. I'm 5'11", no, flat-footed. So if I wear 3 or 4 inch heels, I'm very tall. And it can be used, some people don't like it, but I would like to use it around men because oftentimes if you're taller than them, and it's not a flex or a way to make them feel uncomfortable, but it is a way to say, I'm your equal. And I had this one opposing counsel who was very short. I don't notice people's height below 5'7", so I don't know how short he was, but I always wore my highest of heels around him because he was really mean. And he was just horrible. And so in trial, we were in federal court, we had to stand behind the podium and we had a microphone that was attached. And every time he would come up, he'd have to pull the microphone down to his mouth. And every time I went up, I would pull it way up.
Amazing.
And it was this bonding moment. And I don't think anybody cared about who was tall or short, anything like that. But it was just this funny bonding moment that I had with the jury in that trial because he was so mean. He was so mean to me in trial as well. And they were like not at all about him. And so that was fun. So heels are definitely something that I play around with. And I think because of so much of what we do is virtual these days, including actually some in Washington, we're still doing some virtual trials. And people are shocked when I walk in the room and I am as tall as I am. And they're like, huh, that's interesting. So that definitely is an interesting dynamic.
What an awesome feature to be that height. Like, I think height is an interesting one as well when you talk about the difference between men and women. Mm-hmm. That's where men really, we get judged on like everything all the time, but that is one thing that they get judged on as men. So that's an interesting dynamic when you think about adding heels to it when you're already a decent height.
Mm-hmm. Right, because a man can't put on his 4-inch heels. It's a little bit less acceptable to do that if he wants to feel more powerful. So that's a hard one for them.
We could start a business. We could have flat shoes that were really wedges for men that didn't look like it. We could totally start that and offer that to male travelers. That might be something we should think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be really interesting because, there's that. Yeah, it is. I also, before we close out here, I want to talk a little bit about personality because I still feel like I'm trying to figure out really who I am authentically in the courtroom because I went from being completely green, like greener than green, because I started my own law firm by myself. My first trial, I have Young G as my law partner now, but our trials in the very beginning we did individually. Because a judge told us one time not to try cases together because it would look like we were ganging up on the other side. So it was weird, but we took it to heart for a while. And so I would make all kinds of mistakes. I would cry in court. It was a mess, but jurors really loved it. And now I'm good at what I do. I still cry in court sometimes, but I know the rules of evidence. I make good objections. And I feel like sometimes jurors don't really like that about me. And again, it's very hard to say what they do or don't like, but some of the feedback has been like, hey, you need to not be so on point. Not be so on point. You're too on point now. Remember when you were a mess? That was cute. Now you're too on point and we don't know what to do with that. So I don't know. I think I'm still figuring it out. And I think part of it is a male-female thing. I try not to dwell too much on that because what can I do? I can't change that. But it's hard. I don't know if you guys have experienced anything like that.
100%. I think you nailed it. I think women get that more than men, sadly, right? If we're too good or too on point, right? That is that there's an adjective used for us that's not pleasant, right? And I struggle with that all the time because I try a case with a man all the time. That my trial partner is male, and who is an alpha male. Total alpha male. So compared to him, I look so easygoing, laid back, but the reality is neither one of us is, so if we bring somebody else into the dynamic, all of a sudden I do look really unpleasant and bossy, if you will. And so I struggle with that also. I don't think that I have a direct answer because I also think that you need to come across as assertive because that's how you know your case, right? Your objections are on point. Your facts, them like the back of your hand. And so, that is coming across sadly as bossy. I don't like that word at all, but that's usually what we're called. So I still struggle with that. I don't think that there's a clean answer. I think that we have to keep evolving. And one of the things I'm trying to do is talk more and more to jurors. Usually, I have 3 or 4 questions I always ask, but then if I think it's going to be a tough panel to talk to after a verdict, I'll start with what did you guys think of me? And be brutally honest, and I'm like, look, this is how I get better. Right. And even if I tried a new suit, and let's just say I went out in the world and tried some color or something, I probably wouldn't, but let's just say I did, I would ask and just be like, I want to know because this is what I do for a living. And, you are the best person to give me the feedback. But I also think, one of the things I've also done is, and I know I've talked about using a jury consultant, but, have them watch a half day of trial, and see, and, or, record, and I don't do a lot of mock stuff only because we're so busy, but like record it and send it to somebody who has some experience to say, I had somebody say, we were critiquing a law student, you sound a little bit like a Valley girl. She didn't even know what that meant, So then you played the video back and she was like, oh, I get it. I need to, to work on that. And I see it, I hear it. So I think sometimes it's just finding somebody that maybe you trust to give you some feedback. In my last trial, I had our jury consultant stay for opening to watch my opening. She had the opportunity just because of flights and, goofy stuff that was going on. And I said, I don't need the feedback on the subject matter. I got that. That part we got. I need the feedback on the presentation, where I stood. I've been working hard on, leaving the podium, especially even if there's a podium rule, still leaving the podium, even though there's
one fingernail on it. But like...
Exactly. Being able to take a step outside and not being afraid the judge is going to yell at me, or if they do, it not bother me, right? And just go, oh yeah. Thanks. Sorry, Your Honor. Those things. So, I think we all need to just keep working on it. And the other thing I was thinking about the other day is like, we should all go watch each other more often.
Yeah.
And be like, Kari, you did this great in opening and I'm going to borrow it or steal it, frankly. But hey, like you put your hand in your pockets. Did you know that? She'd probably be like, oh my God, I did not know that. And thank you for telling me, like I just had all my trial pants sent to my alteration lady and had all the pockets closed.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Great.
I just had so
what do you do with your hands?
but now they're not going to my pockets. I don't know yet. I'll let you know. That's the next episode. I don't know, but they're not going to my pockets anymore.
Yeah.
Like I sewed them all shut. Can't make, so, I would say those are some of the things that I'm going to look towards doing because we're always going to get critiqued, by the way.
Yeah. Kari, what about you? Any weird personality traits that people like point out at you and you're like,
oh yeah, all the things. I mean, whether I, was wearing this allegedly a see-through shirt, but I was also wearing a suit jacket. So I'm like, okay.
How did you see it?
Yeah, it was bizarre. And that was from a defense lawyer that got a female defense lawyer, which, our harshest critics, I think, are female jurors at the time. You said a lot of the same word. I've gotten called out on this by jurors before, which is embarrassing, and I get so mad at myself when I hear that. I had a juror in a trial we lost tell me that I beat up the poor defendant. But I knew that immediately after that cross when I looked over at the guy who does our trial software, and he is very blunt. And I said, how was that? And he goes, you lost the trial. So that was harsh. But all the things that Molly just talked about, I think are such awesome things that we can do to get feedback. The only other thing that I'll add that I have done in the past, and I don't do this in every case, or I haven't done this in every case, but I have gone to lunch with opposing counsel and asked, just be honest with me, like, what do you think I do this well? What do you think that I do that you're like, that didn't work for you, Kari? I've probably done that 3 times. And it's, of course, the defense counsel that I formed a relationship with. But it's been pretty awesome feedback. So I think that's something that, I learn from every single trial. I actually, whether I like opposing counsel or not, I really learn from them. And especially if it's a female opposing counsel, I've called up opposing counsel and said, I just want to say I really admire what you did, and I want to talk to you about that. I think that is a resource, especially our female opposing counsel can be a resource. So
that is a great idea. Yeah, that really is, because then we can get some, it is hard to hear personal, I do focus groups all the time. Kari, that's such a thing we do in Edge, and I'm used to hearing negative things about my facts or my case, and even about myself from jurors. I'll read an opening and they're like, well, you were emotional in the wrong spots, but not emotional in the spots you're supposed to be. And I'm like, okay, let's work on this. But it's hard to hear that stuff. Like, I don't like how you dress, or I don't like how you do this. But it is important, because our goal is, it can't be ego driven. It has to be about putting on the best performance for our clients, right? And if that means, I don't know, any sort of personal. Dawn used to make fun. I actually don't do it as much anymore. I still do it a little bit, but I twirl my hair pretty incessantly. And it's something Don always called me out on. He's like, do you do that in court? And I'm like, I don't know. Because I don't know when I'm doing it, So it's something I work on, Kari, similar to your finger thing.
It's safe to say that if we are a trial lawyer and if we are a female trial lawyer, that we have a certain, well, put it this way, we have guts, because to put yourself out there like that is a really hard thing to do. And there's this willingness to always look at ourselves, which I think is pretty awesome. Because people that don't do what we do, it's really difficult to understand. It's also to take a beating a lot. So you have to have thick skin to be able to do this, but also be invested in being willing to look at yourself and make changes and accept the flaws and hug them, and maybe change them. I don't know, but I think that's a big part of what makes us great is your willingness to look at yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for being with us today. Well, with me today, I talk in like the royal we or something like that. Thank you for being here with me, but all of our audience members as well. Thank you all for joining us live this week for Fridays with Keenan's Cutting Edge. If you liked the episode, please click the thumbs up button, subscribe, click the little bell thing to get notifications. There's all these algorithm things that you're supposed to do to let the YouTubes know that we're interesting enough for you to tune into on Fridays. We don't have a live episode lined up next week, but keep your eye out for any recordings or whatever Tim's going to throw on the docket for next week. And I'm going to be working behind the scenes to find our next guest. So keep your eye out for the marketing emails about that. Don't forget to send suggestions on topics and speakers. As always, we love to give you what you want to hear from us. So have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next time.